Hi everyone, my name's Curt Spalding. I'm a professor of the practice as Timmons introduced me, which is something I'm starting to get my head around. But I'm very much enjoying my time with the Institute, and I want to thank Amanda for giving me this opportunity to be with all of you and to be with all of you today. So what I will do quickly is try to put this panel in a context I know pretty well, because as regional administrator of EPA, that means running EPA's operations across New England. I got to know these issues at a very local level, what happens in communities. That was the charge President Obama gave us in the President's Climate Action Plan announced in 2013, and I took it very seriously. So a lot of us know that most of the media about climate change has been about how hot it will get, how high the water will get, how severe the storm will be. And that really hasn't connected because people tend to be psychologically risk adverse. They don't embrace risks. And psychologists can talk a lot about that, but the bottom line is they don't connect to it until it actually happens to them. So here in New England, it's been especially difficult because, as the paper reported the other day that the President referred to, we have not had a shockingly catastrophic climate-connected event like the fires in California or the floods in Houston. It hasn't come home yet, although I will say when Hurricane Irene or Tropical Storm Irene went up through Vermont and basically destroyed much of Vermont's communities, it's a different case up there. They are connected. But without these events, we're sort of stuck. You know, how does this really translate to communities, to action, to local thinking? And that's what our panel is about today, because what we're starting to see is climate change affecting property values, coastal property values. They're not appreciating as fast as a recent study showed. And that starts to really have cascading effects in communities. As most of you may know, home ownership is the financial foundation of most families. It's that basic. They don't save much, they don't have a lot in the bank, but they do have their home. So what happens when that foundation starts to erode? That gets very serious at a very personal level for people. Now in New England, we depend on the property tax. We are completely dependent on property tax to sustain our communities, more so than any other place in the country. Now, compound that with the fact that most cities and towns in New England have larger dependence on public debt. So you look at the foundation of what's supposed to pay that debt, and you look at our tax situation, and then you look at what our panelists are going to talk about, and then you start to put the pieces together. A connects to B, connects to C, and suddenly we have a real climate-connected challenge in this region, and especially here in Rhode Island. Let's take it one step further. Schools, roads, parks, these are what people care about in their daily lives. And that is at what's risk, and what we're going to talk about today. Now, as RA, I tried to amplify this point and did a tour of New England, or especially coastal southern New England, to dramatize these connections. I got to see the national seashore and see erosion and see managed retreat out on Cape Cod. If you want to see the front line of climate change in New England, you must go to Cape Cod and see how they're wrestling with that. I went to Situate, Massachusetts, a community that has the largest number of flood insurance claims in the Commonwealth. And I actually heard a strategy which was very scary about broadening the base of the flood insurance program to continue to subsidize what is essentially unsustainable in Situate, Massachusetts. And that was before all the Northeasters hit there last spring. And then finally I got to go to Wickford, Rhode Island, stand in downtown and watch the geyser of water come up through the public park, the parking lot in downtown Situate. So these connections are starting to be made, and that's what our panel is about today. Today we turn to the social science of economics. We get to hear from three, and I think you would appreciate, young, and I'm going to call them pioneering economists that are striving to help us understand what is starting to emerge as a slow, chronic crisis that will have profound effects in our communities. So I'm going to move to our introductions and start with Dr. Barrage, who is Assistant Professor of Economics and Environmental Studies and Faculty Research Fellow here at Brown in the Institute and Economics. She has her PhD from Yale. Lynn's research informs us on the dimensions or difference, or what she calls heterogeneity, about people living in the coastal zone. Understanding, I guess, as we've all come to stand, economics is not really the rational science anymore. It's a behavioral science, and Lynn embraces that. And what I really love about what she did, I'll let her talk about this, is she actually got out in the field and confirmed what her research was talking about. She actually talked to real people about their perceptions, about their risk. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Lynn, who will speak on these topics.